Imagine being thrown out by your own father just because you couldn't afford what he expected, only to come back years later with more power than he ever imagined. This is the story of how I was disowned for being poor and what I did when I came back richer than him. My name's Tyler, and when I was 17, my dad kicked me out of the house because I couldn't pay for a college he thought I didn't deserve to attend in the first place. Growing up, my dad had always been a hard man, calculated, successful, and cold. He ran a mid-sized real estate firm and was obsessed with appearances. If your clothes weren't designer, if your watch wasn't heavy enough to leave a dent on a table, he didn't want you sitting at his dinner table. My mom passed away when I was 10, and after that, Dad changed. No warmth, no empathy, just pressure, performance, and power. He had this idea that I'd follow in his footsteps, take over the family business, and be a spitting image of him. But I wasn't. I loved coding, digital design, and working behind the scenes. I didn't care for power suits or country club politics. And the day I got accepted into a state tech college, not the Ivy League school he wanted, he looked me in the eye and said, "If you're going to be a disappointment, be one on your own dime." He literally tossed my suitcase onto the porch, canceled my phone line, and told me, "You'll thank me one day when life teaches you what being a man means." That night I slept in a friend's basement and cried harder than I ever had in my life. I was broke, humiliated, and completely alone. But that moment flipped a switch in me. I promised myself I'd never need him again. I got a job washing dishes at a diner near campus and used that money to buy a second-hand laptop. Every night after work, I'd code. I built small websites, joined freelance forums, took jobs that paid $30 just to build my skills and reputation. While other students partied, I worked. It was grueling, for hours of sleep, ramen for dinner, and never enough money to fix the broken heater in my rental. But I kept at it. After 2 years, I landed a remote internship with a tech startup. They liked my work so much they hired me full-time before I graduated. That was the real start. I used my first bonus to launch my own app, a marketplace connecting freelancers to small businesses, with real-time task tracking. It took off in 6 months, and I reinvested everything. By the time I was 24, I built 2 successful digital platforms, both sold for 6 figures, and I launched a third that exploded during the pandemic. I was finally living the life I built from rock-bottom, penthouse apartment, speaking at conferences, and running my own company with 20 employees. I never contacted my dad, not once. But I followed his life from a distance. The firm he ran? It started slipping. Bad investments, market crashes, and word was he was forced to downsize. The big house, the one he kicked me out of, he'd mortgaged it 3 times over. He was barely hanging on. And that's when it hit me. I wasn't done. I didn't just want to move on. I wanted closure. Real, brutal, poetic closure. So I waited until I had the cash ready and made an offer on the house through a shell company. The bank was itching to get rid of the debt, and within weeks, the deal was done. I owned the very house I was disowned from. Now it was time for the second act of my plan. Owning the house was just the beginning. The very same mansion that once echoed with my father's cold words, "You're a disappointment," was now mine. But I wasn't interested in gloating right away. I wanted to do it smart, strategic, and with precision. The first step was simple. I let him live there without knowing. For the first month, nothing changed. I told the property management company I had no interest in disrupting the tenant. Yet, I watched from a distance as my father, completely unaware of who now owned the roof over his head, tried to maintain his old world standards. I had a contact at the HOA send me photos every week. The lawn, once perfectly trimmed, was now slightly overgrown. The luxury car he used to brag about? Repossessed. His firm had downsized to one cramped office in a strip mall, and he'd laid off half his staff. It was like watching a slow-motion collapse. But I wasn't satisfied with him simply struggling. I wanted him to understand what it felt like to have everything pulled from beneath you by someone you trusted. So I moved on to phase 2, the eviction. But not just any eviction. I wanted to make sure it hit him hard. I had a legal team draft a formal 30-day notice to vacate the property, citing financial restructuring by the property owner. I made sure the notice came in an official envelope, with no names attached, just the LLC that technically owned the property. I imagined his face when he opened it, probably thinking it was some routine HOA document, only to realize he was being kicked out of his own sanctuary. I didn't stop there. I made sure the notice came on the anniversary of the day he kicked me out, down to the exact date. 24 hours after the letter was delivered, I received a call from the property management team. Mr. Harrison, the current tenant has contacted us in a panic. He's demanding a meeting with the owner. What would you like us to do? I smiled, sipping coffee from my penthouse balcony. Tell him I'll meet him personally. Let's set it up for Friday at noon. I flew into town the day before. I hadn't set foot in that neighborhood in almost a decade, and the memories hit me like a freight train as I drove past the school I once walked to, the corner store where I bought snacks with change, and finally that towering house with its stone gate and marble pillars, the one place that had never felt like home. I arrived 15 minutes early, wearing a charcoal gray suit and mirrored sunglasses. I wanted him to see who I'd become before he recognized who I was. When he opened the door, I almost didn't recognize him either. The once proud Titan now looked tired, thinner, with streaks of gray in his hair and worry lines that hadn't been there before. Can I help you? He asked, skeptical. Yes, I replied, stepping forward. I'm the one who now owns this house. Thought we should talk face to face. His eyes narrowed. You? You bought this? I smiled. Technically, my company did. I just thought you should know who made the decision to terminate your lease. There was a pause, a long one, where I could see gears turning in his head. Then his expression shifted from confusion to realization. Tyler. I took off my sunglasses. Surprised, Dad. The color drained from his face. For a solid 30 seconds, he didn't say a word. Then he muttered, So, you're the one who bought me out? I nodded. With cash. You remember what cash is, right? The thing I didn't have when you threw me out? He stepped back, looking like he'd seen a ghost. Tyler, I didn't know. I didn't realize. I cut him off. Save it. You knew exactly what you were doing. You made me homeless because I didn't live up to your perfect image. You thought I'd break. But I didn't. I built something better than your little real estate empire. And now, I own the home you took from me. He looked around, like he was seeing the house for the first time. So what now? You going to humiliate me? Kick me out in front of the neighbors? I shrugged. I thought about it. But no, I'm giving you 30 days. Just like you gave me 0. And unlike you, I'm not canceling your phone line or changing the locks overnight. He stared at me, his pride visibly crumbling. Where will I go? He asked, voice low. I don't know, I said honestly. Maybe one of your friends in high places. Oh wait, that's right. You burned those bridges, didn't you? He didn't respond. I turned and began walking toward the car, but paused. You know, when you kicked me out, I promised myself I'd never be weak again. That I'd never need you or anyone like you. And I kept that promise. But now, I'm going to make a new one. I will never be like you. As I drove away, I didn't feel triumph or rage. I felt clean, like I had taken out the trash and could finally breathe. But the story wasn't over. Because while I had taken back the house, the ghost of my father's legacy still loomed. The neighbors still remembered him as a success story, not a fraud. The community still believed he was a man of status and principle. And worst of all, he was still clinging to the last bits of influence he had in the local business scene. So I made a decision. I would finish what I started, not with revenge, but with reinvention. I poured resources into local outreach, tech scholarships for underprivileged kids, and startup incubators that gave young developers a shot without needing elite connections. And when the local paper asked to profile the mysterious buyer who now lived in the old Harrison estate, I agreed, on one condition. I told them the truth. About being kicked out. About starting from scratch. About rebuilding. The story went viral. And when they published it with the headline, From Disowned to Millionaire, the son who bought his father's house, my inbox exploded. Dozens of messages from people who'd experienced the same betrayal, from parents, mentors, friends, people who felt seen for the first time. And one message stood out. It was from my dad. Short. Just one line. I deserve everything you've done. I hope you find peace. I didn't reply, because peace wasn't something I needed from him. I had found it in the struggle, in the climb, in every line of code I wrote in that freezing apartment, every rejected pitch that made me tougher, every friend who didn't give up on me. My father may have disowned me, but I reclaimed every part of my life he tried to bury. And now, I was living not just in his house, but far, far beyond his shadow. The thing about revenge is, people think it ends when you get even, but it doesn't. Not really. The real end comes when you've built something so strong, so untouchable, that the past can't even scratch it anymore. That's where I was heading now. My dad was out of the house, just like I had been all those years ago. Only this time, he had no one offering a couch, no friend's basement to crash in, no backup plan. From what I'd heard, he moved into a small rental outside the city, a far cry from the luxury he was used to. I didn't contact him again, not because I was angry anymore, but because the silence said more than any words could. Meanwhile, I wasn't just living in the house, I was transforming it. That mansion had always felt like a trophy for my dad, a symbol of dominance and legacy. But for me, it became something entirely different, a base of operations, a creative haven, a place where I could host young entrepreneurs, developers, and people like me who never got a first chance, let alone a second. The once sterile hallways now echoed with laughter, brainstorming sessions, and startup pitches. I turned the massive formal dining room into a collaborative workspace with whiteboards, coffee stations, and computers. I held weekend workshops for local teens who wanted to learn tech skills but couldn't afford formal training. And as word spread, the house got a new nickname, the Launchpad. People no longer whispered about it as that Harrison place. It was Tyler's house now. But the past has a funny way of circling back, especially when it feels unfinished. One day, during a weekend tech boot camp, a man showed up at the gate. The cameras caught his image, and my stomach dropped. It was my dad. He looked worse than the last time I saw him. More aged, thinner, almost haunted. I debated ignoring him, but something inside me, maybe closure, maybe curiosity, told me to let him in. He stepped into the foyer and looked around like he was seeing a ghost of a life that had slipped through his fingers. "I'm not here to ask for anything," he said quietly. "I just wanted to see what you've done. Everyone's talking about it." I didn't say anything. I just let him walk through the house slowly, past the rooms he once ruled with an iron fist. He paused in the dining room, watching a group of teenagers scribbling code on a whiteboard. "This was where we held formal dinners," he murmured. "Now it's a think tank," I replied. He turned to me. "You've made something real here. Something good." I stayed silent. "I ruined that for you, didn't I?" he added. "All those years ago, I thought I was teaching you a lesson. About being tough. But I was just being cruel." For the first time, he looked like he truly meant it. Like he understood the weight of what he'd done. "You didn't break me," I finally said. "But you did harden me. And maybe that's why I got here. But don't mistake that for thanks." He nodded. "I don't expect forgiveness. I just wanted to see it with my own eyes. What you became." Then he did something I never expected. He took a folded paper from his pocket and handed it to me. "It's a letter. I've been writing it for months. You don't have to read it now. Or ever." He turned and left before I could respond. I stood there, holding that letter, surrounded by the buzz of keyboards and coffee grinders, and I realized something strange. I didn't hate him anymore. I didn't need revenge anymore. I had already won, not just by buying the house or evicting him, but by breaking the cycle. He ruled with fear. I led with vision. He built walls. I opened doors. That night, I sat on the porch and opened the letter. It was long, filled with confessions, regrets, and apologies. He talked about losing mom and never knowing how to process it. About pouring himself into work because it was easier than dealing with grief. About how, when I got older, I reminded him of everything he'd failed to protect. There was no excuse in it, just understanding. And maybe, just maybe, I needed that. Closure doesn't always look like someone begging or crying. Sometimes it's just quiet honesty. I didn't write him back, but I kept the letter in my office drawer. And from time to time, when things got hard, I'd read it, not out of spite, but as a reminder of where I came from and where I never wanted to go back to. Years passed, and the Launchpad became something bigger than I ever imagined. Investors joined in. I opened a second house, then a third. My story spread, not as a revenge tale, but as an underdog triumph. I was invited to speak at conferences, on podcasts, even at universities. People called me the dropout CEO, the disowned genius, but I didn't care about the titles. All I cared about was this. The next kid who got told they weren't good enough might hear my story and think, if he did it, so can I. And maybe that's the real victory. Not the eviction, not the millions, but the impact, the legacy, the fact that I turned pain into purpose. My dad still lives in that small apartment. Sometimes he sends me updates, usually short emails or occasional photos from his volunteer work at a local shelter. I don't always respond, but I read every word. He's trying. In his own way, he's rebuilding. And I respect that. Because the truth is, people can change. They just have to lose everything sometimes to realize what really matters. I lost everything once. And in that loss, I found myself. And now, I live not to prove him wrong, but to prove that love, grit, and vision can build more than money ever could. Thank you for listening to my story. If you enjoyed it, make sure to like this video, subscribe to the channel, and turn on notifications so you never miss another unbelievable story just like this one. See you in the next one.